Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone. A big hello and welcome to CANIE Climate Week, Climate Action Week 2022. Thank you all for joining wherever you might be in whichever time zone. My name is Fraser Cargill. I'm happy to welcome you to this session, How to Get Involved with CANIE. This is the first of two sessions we'll do on this to accommodate the different time zones in which we all operate. I am joining you from the traditional lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation in Sydney, Australia. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I extend that respect to all First Nations people joining us here today. Welcome. In case you didn't know, CANIE is the Climate Action Network for International Educators. We're a grassroots organisation with a mission to mobilize and support the international education sector to act on climate. We're a non-profit entirely run by volunteers, many of whom are here today, and I'm hoping many more who are here today for the future. We come from all over the world, and you're going to meet some of us today to talk about how we got involved, what we do and the many ways that we do it, and that you too can be involved, and we hope to see a lot more of you doing that. But as they say, first a word from our sponsor. The University of Auckland is a proud sponsor of this year's CANIE Climate Action Week. As New Zealand's leading university, they have a commitment to sustainability in their teaching, research and operations. Auckland is actually the only university in the world to be ranked in the top 10 globally in both leading sustainability rankings, the QS, Sustainability and Times Higher University Impact Rankings. And they were the very first organisation to sign up to the CANIE Accord, which we'll talk a little bit about later, and have been a fantastic sponsor to CANIE since its inception. You can find more about their work on the University of Auckland website, but I believe we've got a small video that we're going to play now.
Hello, I'm Professor Dawn Freshwater. I'm the Vice-Chancellor and President of the University of Auckland. I'm delighted that the University of Auckland is the United Nations Academic Impact Hub. We are honoured to lead this hub for 1,300 institutions across 130 countries.
I've always been very interested in climate change and to talk to other young students who are about my age and how our generation can make an impact in the world while climate change action doesn't have to start when I start my career. It can start now.
So today, just a brief introduction. As I said, my name is Fraser Cargill. I'm the inaugural Global Board Secretary for CANIE, a role I've been privileged to have for the last 2 years. I became involved with CANIE after completing the Al Gore Climate Reality Leadership Training course, and I was looking to get more involved in climate action in the area that I work in, clearly international education, where I've been in and out of for the last 20 plus years. At that time, Ilse Lamont and Pia Tulia Nikula had recently formed CANIE and invited me along to one of the first board meetings. Although there was no formal board at the time, I was later sort of voluntold about my new role as the board secretary, which I accepted with gratitude and have enjoyed immensely since. I'm very passionate about the role that education has to play in basically solving all the world problems, but there's no bigger problem we face today than climate. So I'm really so pleased to be involved in how we can do this from an education perspective. In my day job, I'm the Director for Global Partnerships and Recognition at PeopleCert and LanguageCert, which is a professional qualifications and English language testing organisation out of the UK and Europe. And I'm involved in international education through our assessments business. Today for this session on how to get involved with CANIE, I'm joined today by my 3 esteemed secretary colleagues from our regional chapters. So I believe Fiona is now the new Vice President of Oceania. But I'll let them just do a quick introduction, starting with Amy, then Fiona, and then Monica, to introduce yourselves.
Thanks, Fraser. Hi, everyone. My name's Amy Marcus. I use she, her pronouns, and I joined CANIE as secretary for the freshly founded Americas chapter about a year ago now, and it's been so much fun. I'm located in Northern California, or on indigenous Bay Miwok land, and I'm happy to be here today. Thanks.
Hi everybody, my name's Fiona. I joined CANIE last year as the secretary for Oceania when that chapter first started. As Fraser said, I've just recently stepped up into the vice president role, so I'm keen for any volunteers who would like to join us on the leadership board for Oceania as secretary. It's a great organisation to be a part of. In my day job, I'm the head of student mobility and exchange at the University of Sydney, so very committed to giving students international experiences, but obviously now with a focus on making sure they're aware of the impact that has and that they can do it sustainably moving forward. It's lovely to see you all here today.
And hello, my name is Monica Perez del Mar. Right now I'm in Madrid, Spain. I'm the secretary for the Europe chapter. I joined CANIE last year. I really don't know how I came to CANIE, but I'm really glad I did. And I took over the role of secretary when Caroline McGann, who was a previous secretary, went on maternity leave. So now she's back, and I'm like hesitant on giving her the position back because I'm really enjoying this role. But we're going to see how we can manage this. And anybody who is in Europe, please join us. We're having the European chapter on Friday, so I hope to see some of you there. Oh, and I have been the executive director for the Study Abroad Association in Spain, APUNE, up until September. And when I decided that I wanted to pursue my doctorate in environmental education. And so that's what I'm not doing, but I will start soon. So anyway, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you all, and we certainly don't want to lose you, Monica. Thank goodness there's so many different positions available. Thanks everyone for the introduction. So today's sessions, we have around an hour. One of the things that we want to go over is first to learn a little bit more about CANIE. For those of you who are less familiar, meet some of the volunteers. There's quite a number of us here. Learn about the different ways to volunteer with CANIE. Hear about some of our more specific sort of global regional volunteering opportunities, but also who is the best contact for them. There are real specific skills that we need. We need lots of bodies and we need lots of things to happen, but there are some real specific skills as a volunteer and organization we need right now. And also hopefully to get some of you to register your interest. No commitments, just registering your interest at the early stages. So founded in late 2019, CANIE first event was in May 2020. As I mentioned before, our mission is to lead and support the international educators around the world to take bold climate action. And we want to do this through providing open access to information to raise basically the collective ambition of the sector. We know how much global warming's impact on our lives. There's nobody that's here today that doesn't actually see that and probably experience it in your day-to-day lives. We know how important it is at this point in time with the end of COP27. I think it's been highlighted just how important it really is. And here, I think in international education, we also need to take our part and drive it. And, we're very different. The focus is on international educators in CANIE. We're not doing what many of our host universities or partner universities do with the work that they're already doing in climate action on the Sustainable Development Goals, for example. But ours is very specifically focused on international education and the role that we as international educators can do to make a difference. We do this through developing greater consciousness across the sector, supporting our members everywhere, creating a platform the CANIE website particularly, but different medium also to share our ideas, examples of good practice. There's so much happening in different places where people are really doing great work. It's about how do we showcase that? How do we learn from each other? We're all experiencing the same issues, and it's really managing to promote the good practice and sharing it, but also doing things like this, running events and commissioning or developing research. We have a whole research group that do phenomenal stuff in the sector, but also providing practical guidelines on how we can do things together. So there are a number of ways to get involved in CANIE. Here are just 6 of them, and these cover quite large things. First thing you can do is join CANIE. I'll highlight that in a second. Participate in one of the working groups, and I'll walk through some of the working groups with my colleagues here to talk about their experience in what they actually do. There's the CANIE Global Board, and how you can get involved in the Global Board and what that does as an organization. There are regional chapters. At the moment we have, as was introduced, we've got the Americas, Oceania, and also Europe. But what we want to do is have chapters everywhere. So if you're dialing in from somewhere else in the world, we'd love you to think about it and contact us if you're thinking about a new chapter. And there's lots of people to talk to. Attending your regional chapter meetings, if you're dialing in from any of these 3 regions, which no doubt most of you are, then you'll find out later on in the week there are chapter meetings come along to each of those. I'll put a highlight up at the end showing you when the dates and times are for those. And then lastly, but one of the most important things we're doing is the CANIE Accord and how you can get involved with that. So just basically one of the ways, oh, that's nice, it's moved on me, the link. Join CANIE, go to the website, click on Join CANIE. It's a basic form to fill in, and then you literally are a CANIE member. And what does it mean to be a CANIE member? It's a good question. Once you have a CANIE account, obviously you can bookmark all your favorite resources on the website. The website's great. If you haven't explored it yet, have a look around, take your time, look at the different resources, the information that's there. There's links to all our social media accounts. And I need to highlight here, this is all set up by volunteers. So as you're looking through the CANIE account, this is the type of stuff that volunteers do. This has all been done by volunteers. We've had some funding where we've for the technical side of the website initially, but things like the content, layout, design, everything has come from volunteers. It's been quite a phenomenal task. But also as a member, you'll be included in all the communications, the newsletters, but you'll also be able to vote, which means that when we are putting forward new positions, particularly on the global board, or we're making changes to our constitution. CANIE is we're not yet a charity organization, but we are an incorporated association within Australia, which is we come under the Australian laws for incorporated associations, which are for not-for-profit organizations. So we have some very strict reporting guidelines on these, which I'll talk about later on the governance side. So first thing to do, join CANIE, sign up and follow on all our social media accounts. The working groups. Now, we've got a number of working groups in here. The CANIE Accord Accelerator, marketing communication, podcast production, content resource library, fundraising, climate justice, and green conferences and travel with CANIE. So as a group of volunteers, we're always looking for very specific skills as well as warm bodies who've got lots of time and passion. Passion and enthusiasm, I think, conquers all, but there are some things where we really need some very specific skills for, and I'll mention some of these as will some of my colleagues. These committees are actually appointed by the CANIE Global Board, and they're chaired by members of the board. Most of them have come from ideas of things that we need. And often there's moving ones, or we've moved them along. For example, the green conferences and travel with CANIE was driven out of initiatives that would come out of the European chapter in particular. So the next thing was, right, okay, that's something that we all need to get involved in. So we develop a working group or a committee that's more structured, and we start to bring in volunteers to work on how we do that. There's absolutely no regional affiliation. You don't have to come from a particular country or a particular type of institution to get involved in any of this. It's just, do you have the skill set? Do you have the passion? Do you have the time to commit to it, and certainly to get you involved? So the CANIE Accord Accelerator, if you haven't seen the CANIE Accord, the CANIE Accord was developed last year by us. It came out of a series of meetings to get the sector to sign up to a set of commitments. There's 70 principles in there. I don't want to go into details on this because there is a specific session or 2 sessions on the CANIE Accord, which I'd love you all to attend to get a lot more information. But what we're looking for is for people to, if you come in here from an institution today or an international education associated business, then get your institution to sign up. Have a look at the Accord, look through the principles. The basic sign up side is actually very straightforward. You'll find that your institutions are already doing most of the basic stuff. It's just as we want to challenge ourselves to do more, we start to go through and go up. There's some who've signed a minimum of 5. There are some of them who are up to around 60 plus out of the 70 principles that they're committing to actually take action on, which is absolutely fantastic. So have a look at the Accord on the website. I encourage you all to go back to your institutions with it, find out who to talk to, reach out to members of CANIE, come along to these sessions later in the week so that you can find out exactly what it takes to get involved. I promise I'm not going to talk all the time. I'm going to introduce my colleagues to talk about some of this any minute now. Otherwise, people will be so bored listening to my voice. I'm already bored listening to it. Marketing communication. I'm going to split these up a little bit. As anyone in marketing communication will tell you, obviously very different skills. In CANIE, we're looking for a range of skills in marketing communication. On the marketing side in particular, we're really looking for people who can bring to us some of the technical skills, website design and layout, newsletter layout, some more technical marketers, graphic design, etc. So the technical side. On the communication side, we'd love people who can write copy, content writers, help us to build up the content library, which we'll talk about shortly, but also digital marketing, social media marketing, data analytics. Do you have privacy and compliance experience, which would also be phenomenal? Given that, you know, we put out a lot of content sort of globally and making sure that we are compliant with the various data privacy laws in every country, not just GDPR in Europe. Podcast production. Amy,
Yeah.
you're going to talk to us.
Yeah, thanks, Fraser. I get to talk about our podcast team. So this one, we actually have a dedicated person for the technical side of the editing and production and so on. So that's great. So you don't have to have those skills, although of course those skills are always welcome. I only recently, a few months ago, joined this team. So I'm speaking on behalf of the folks who really know what they're doing. But it's been really fun to see this podcast grow and evolve. It's essentially, it's called the CANIE Climate Dialogues because they're conversations with 1 or 2 other people about either the work they're doing, the research they're doing, trends they're seeing on climate action in international education. And we've started picking up episodes after a bit of a hiatus, and it's been really fun to see it come together. So check them out. There's a few new episodes out, and we'll have more coming out later this year and into the new year.
Thanks, Amy. And one of the things also in the podcast that we're looking for, once you've had a chance to check it out and listen to them, is new ideas. You know, everyone's, or have you heard someone speak lately? that you think, wow, that'd be fantastic to someone to come along, so it's not just about you yourself adding those skills, it's about helping us to generate new ideas for the podcasts as well.
Absolutely. And those intros to people who would be interested in being interviewed are worth their weight in gold. So absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all know someone who you think, oh my God, what a great speaker. I'd love to have that person come along. So that'd be fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Amy. Content and resource library. Ine, could you tell us a little bit?
Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Ine Williams, and I've been part of CANIE since, August 2020. And I'm just going to apologize in advance if you hear any wind behind me, because I'm off grid in Arizona in a tent joining you because I'm that dedicated. But let me tell you a little bit about content and resource library. I remember when we first joined CANIE, we were all talking about how as international educators we could share all the things we're learning, a lot of the resources we were finding out about. And we were just at the early stages of putting together a website design plan. And now we have it, and we have some resources that we've already reviewed, but essentially the content resource library working group is a group that is created to create this open access resource for anyone that would like to visit the CANIE website. It's information that can raise this collective ambition of the sector by giving us education and access to things that we don't always have to pay for or be working at an institution to get access to, et cetera. So we want to make sure we have the most up-to-date types of things, whether it's research papers, articles that are relevant to our sector and to addressing climate change. And there's a lot of different ways that you can contribute in this kind of working group. So I will say this about this group. It's not the sexiest group, right? Maybe marketing, like, yeah, I get to make cool images. Yeah. Podcast, actually speak and practice my speaking skills. No, it's more of, it reminds me of when I've been part of scholarship committees. You really care about it because you want someone to get the scholarship, right? With content, it's the same way. You really care. You get maybe first peek into what kinds of cool things people all around the world are finding about how we as international educators can take action to address this climate disaster. But we also have to go through it and make sure it's something that's going to work for all of us, right? Make sure if it's not accessible freely, then we put comments and notes about how you can access it. So it does take kind of what I would say administrative work. You have to go through a process of reviewing the content. We have put together a vetting system, and you would essentially review it, see if it kind of stacks up to what we think is CANIE presentable. And then we actually have a next step, which is to write up some kind of a description of it so that the marketing team can then use that to post it on the website and make it look pretty. So it is, I think, something that's really great for someone who likes to be the first to know, likes to make sure that people get access to information that's going to be helpful and then can share that out with people, and is also organized. And we have an online spreadsheet, an online sheet where people can submit anything that they find, or can submit questions about what we've already posted. And that's something that the people in this working group would be part of doing, reviewing that, seeing if something new's come in, and then going through the process of reviewing it, vetting it, et cetera. So it's not complicated. That's why it's not sexy, but it's a really important part of what CANIE's all about. It's one of the first things we started talking about when we got together as a group. So I hope some of you have interest and skill sets in something like that. It would be amazing to have you be part of that working group.
Thank you, Ine. I think you've sold that really highly. I can see the hands going up already. Fundraising, I'll give a brief overview on the fundraising side. As a fundraising is critical to what we do in CANIE. As a volunteer-led not-for-profit, we don't receive any grants or government funding from anywhere, or institutional funding as such. We rely on donations from institutions, from associated organizations, and we've been everything we've done, all that's been done to date, is run through funding from institutions like the University of Auckland, who's provided money for us for some of the stuff that we do, but also we've had individual members who've contributed funding for us that has allowed us to do things. The fundraising committee, what do we look for in fundraising? It's really people who, there's a range of things. One, obviously, dedication, passion, helping us prepare the types of presentations that we need to go out to different. There are a lot of organizations who are more than happy to donate. We haven't found anyone who we've asked for money that have turned us down. They might have turned us down on the amount we've asked for, but they certainly haven't turned us down. So there's a lot of interest in the sector for showing support for what it is that CANIE is trying to do and pulling all of this together. But as far as looking for how we develop a network, a list of institutions who we think can provide funding for what we do, that could be within the sector, but it also external to the international ed sector. There might be climate action funding available through foundations in different parts of the world that you might be tapped into. You might know who they are. Help us to prepare whatever submit grants proposals for that type of funding, follow up, looking to help build up our network of potential funding organizations. It can be either for specific events, such as Climate Action Week, where we need a lot of funding to pull things together, or where we it might be for the ongoing events, so the production of the newsletter, for new content, for research, for funded research, for the podcast sessions. All of these things to keep the lights on costs us money, and as volunteers we're relying on that all the time. So if, for example, you work in, maybe an alumni section of your institution and you're used to reaching out to high net worth individuals, perhaps this is something where you can switch it a little bit and come over and help with the CANIE side. But really it's having people sort of more dedicated to help sort of chase up the funding piece. And again, you can be based anywhere in the world. We don't really mind. There's no specific area we need the funding. It all comes into a central resource, and then we fund activities from there as and when they are required. And one of the things that we're really trying to focus on doing is actually getting the funding so that we can employ people, even if it's 1 or 2 people on a part-time basis, to keep things moving. What we find is that we've done this 2 times now over the last sort of 12 months. For funding positions to do particular things, and that's when we can really move stuff. As volunteers, we've all got a passion, but we've also all got day jobs, and as a result, we've got the commitment, but you don't always have the time to make sure that we can get things really achieved. So bringing on board full-time staff is one of our key focuses for the next over the next 6 months, is to raise the money to enable us to do that. It could even be if someone looks like they have spare time and would like to do it in a volunteer capacity, that's absolutely fantastic as well. Innie and Amy, I might hand back over to both of you to talk a little bit about climate justice, what we do in that sort of working group and committee, and what type of volunteers that you're looking for.
Yeah, thanks. I can get us started. As part of the climate justice working group, we have meetings every 2 weeks to talk through our projects and plans and so on. We've done info sessions on what climate justice is and what it has to do with international education and why we're working in that space. We've done workshops on finding your niche within climate action and how to think about that in the context of climate justice, as well as we did an info session on carbon offsets and how they're a little more complicated than you might think. My co-presenter on that, one of my co-presenters on that, Jake, is here today. We also presented with Suzanne Bolivar. And I'll defer to Ine to share a bit more.
Thank you. I'll tell you a secret, y'all. The whole reason that I joined CANIE was because when I went to the very first meeting, they brought up justice. And I thought that was a really important conversation within the discussion about climate change. And I thought, wow, they're talking about that? That's already a good sign to me. So right away, I made it a point for me that I wanted to get involved with CANIE and have climate justice be a key part, not because I was some expert. I was an expert on my own experience, but not necessarily what was going on around the world or anything, or how to apply it. So it was still a learning curve, but I was passionate about the topic and wanted to learn more and share what I was learning with our community at large. So let me just say this about climate justice. You know, the one thing that we all need to understand about climate change and climate impacts is that they're not felt equally around the world by everyone, right? So one of the key goals that CANIE has is just to keep the understanding and the conversation and the need for actions to be centered within this lens of justice as part of the key part of how we operate. And if you're not sure like how climate change is disproportionate or who it's disproportionate towards, it's a lot of times you'll hear things like geography, right? Gender, definitely race, class, economics, those kinds of things. So a lot of different people have been talking about climate change like it's in the future. At least a while ago they were, just a little while ago. And there's been people dealing with this stuff for years. So in international education, we are global. That means that we have the capacity to understand and think about this around the world. And as international educators decide, you know, what are some things that we might be able to do? Who can we partner with in our community to understand it better? How can we help lead some of these efforts from our institutions, our educational spaces, and with the students, potentially, many of whom are from areas or in situations where they're feeling these things directly, if not the staff and faculty that you're, you know, your colleagues with. So it's important. We don't want it to be something that's put in the backside, which was historically what was happening with a lot of the big climate groups. We want CANIE to be a leader in this, and part of being a leader is understanding this is not something that impacts people equally. So we have to think about it like that. So the Climate Justice Group is a safe space, which is one of my favorite things. We don't always have to agree. We don't always have to understand everything. We work through things together. And I love that working group because I always feel like I can speak authentically, genuinely, and even if I don't get everything right, it's okay. So join the group. We'd love to have you.
How can anyone not want to join that group now, Innie? Thank you. And on the last sort of session on the green conferences and travel with CANIE, I will let Monica talk a little bit about that. One of the great initiatives for the travel with CANIE that came out of the European chapter. So Monica, over to you.
All right. Yes, I want to join many of them now, but anyway, the question is time, but there's so many interesting things. So the travel with CANIE, maybe I shouldn't be the person talking about this because I wasn't the one that started it, but anyway, I'll talk as best as I can. I think last year we started to, some people from the leadership in Europe started to talk with Erasmus, the Erasmus program, to see how we could travel, to see what the possibility it was of traveling to conferences in Europe by train. Obviously, being in Europe has the advantages, and we're privileged because we have a network of trains. So it makes much easier to travel to places by train. But anyway, we started by having meetings with the Erasmus people, seeing how they were fostering traveling by train with the students. And then we started to have meetings with the EAIE, which is the European Association of International Educators, because they were having a meeting in Barcelona and in September. And there was many meetings. And at the end, we were able to get like a program together and an initiative to foster, to promote traveling to this meeting in Barcelona in September by train. Well, some people that came from Ireland went on ferry and train. So, but anyway, and for that conference, 38 people went that we know of because there was a webpage, and I think we can put the link here where you signed up to see where you were going, where you were coming from. And they calculated the tons of CO2 that were saved. So these 38 people who actually signed up, then there were many people who went by train who didn't sign up on the Travel with CANIE webpage. And the 38 people that did sign up saved 10 with 7 tons. So, and then we actually, CANIE was awarded the President's prize in EAIE, so we were really glad with that. And during this conference, we also set up a breakfast with people, the CANIE members that were in Barcelona, and we got to meet everybody face to face, which was one of the first times we met people face to face, because we've always had these meetings by Zoom. So it was very, very nice. And then they shared pictures of the traveling on the train. They met people on the train. They talked, they put up posters. It was like, I was really jealous of seeing like all the traveling that was going on to Europe, in Europe, to get to the conferences. And then we really got a push, and we have been talking a lot and been collaborating a lot with the Forum on Education Abroad. And they also had a conference in Milan in October, and 20 people signed up on the CANIE webpage, on the Travel with CANIE webpage, and it's saving 5.78 tons of CO2. And some people went from Ireland, all the way from Ireland to Milan, which is where the meeting was held, the conference was held. And the Forum joined with us. Actually, there are also, well, AIE and the Forum have signed the climate accord. And the Forum, if you signed up for traveling sustainably, they gave you a €100 brochure, voucher, for the next conference. So, and they've incorporated into their finding conference venues the sustainability issues. So we're working also on trying to make these conferences greener, and be a section on this too. So anyway, and we know that in Europe it's easier, and we have the train system, so we have that advantage. But maybe in the States, I don't know, it can be done, or at least this can serve as an inspiration. When you see the photos of the people traveling by train, and all the people that were meeting from all the towns that were getting on the train from all the towns, it was like a very cool. And actually, I was very jealous of people who went from Spain to Milan on the train. It took them like 18 hours, but I think they had fun. So anyway, that's what we're continuing to work on this. We're already working with AIE for the Rotterdam conference, which is next year. So, and if you want to join this, what skills are needed? Perseverance, and trying to convince conference organizers that this is the way to go. So.
Thanks, Monica. That's great. Yeah, like you said, I think in Europe it's been a big push because people have been doing this and have the ability. For those of us based in Australia, it's a little bit harder in some respects. For any colleagues joining from New Zealand, harder still, but there are still ways to do it. And I think when we're talking about domestic conferences, we can all have a look and we can learn from the experiences that they've been working through in Europe. And just on the green conferences side, one of the things just over in the last week, we think secured some funding to actually initiate a global workshop with some of the key international education conference organizers to actually bring them all together to have a collective on best practice in greening and making more sustainable conferences for the sector. So that's kind of exciting, which is great, but more on that later. All right, just moving us along. Or not moving us, there we go. So the contacts, and once you sign up as if you're a member already, or once you sign up and become a member, you get access to our Slack chat area. You'll find these particular people, as you can see, poor Kelly, who isn't here with us. Thankfully, she's gone to bed, who's been one of the great organizers and who's been helping to drive Climate Action Week, is a key contact for many of these for CANIE Accord. So just look for us all in the Slack members and make contact. So it's Kelly for the first three, Ine for content, myself on fundraising, Climate Justice, Adrian Fuzak, and the Green Conferences is Travel with CANIE is Margarita Pasquini. Margarita was one of the ones who first started the Travel with CANIE in Europe. Now we're going to just do a quick poll. just so that you're not listening, but you're actually doing. On which of the working groups are you most interested in joining, assuming that everyone is interested in joining them. So we're going to launch the poll now, and then we'll have a look at the results. Wow, look at that, Ine. What a sell you did on content and resource. That's great. Climate justice as well, fantastic. Okay, 18 out of 20, we've got 90% participation on that. That's excellent. Absolutely fantastic. No marketing communications. I clearly did a bad sell on that side. Maybe in the next session, we'll have some marketing communications people and the podcasters and fundraising as well. Next session, I think
That's the sexiest group. That's all. The marketing communication.
Clearly not. Clearly it's content, resource, and climate justice, or the theme between that I'm seeing here is in it. It's whichever one you're and Amy are actually pushing forward, or Monica, not me, are the ones getting volunteers. So look, fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for your comments on that. All right, so now if you want to talk about the sort of the sexy side, governance. Maybe I need to get you to talk about governance. I want to just, I'm conscious of time for everyone at the moment. You know, we're down to about sort of 15, 17 minutes to go. So I want to get through some of this and talk about what it is that we do at the Global Board, the kind of composition, diversity, how to get involved, what sort of time commitment it takes, current vacancies that we have, or future vacancies, how we fill them. Then a little bit about the regional chapters, the roles, responsibilities, and also some of the vacancies there and how we fill those. Now, this very difficult to see sheet just gives you an idea about what our current structure looks like. So within the Global Board, we have an executive committee, and the executive committee is actually made up of the president, the vice president, secretary, and treasurer. So we have that, and then we have 5 sort of ordinary board members, and then we have the chapter presidents from the regional chapters. So the board will continue to expand as we do this. So I need to say at this point in time, we're doing a review of the governance. We're 2 years in. We're sort of picking models that people have worked with before, but we're also trying to adapt as we grow our membership, as we grow the chapters. So the governance side will continue to evolve a little bit. And we're doing a review at the moment of the positions, how we appoint, the amount of people that we appoint, etc., just to make sure that we cover really good, we get our levels of diversity of both from a geographic perspective, from a cultural perspective, gender perspective, but also the skill set that people bring to a board. For anyone who's been involved in either not-for-profits or for-profit boards, you'll understand that, you know, from a board perspective, you need diversity. You need people bringing different skill sets. We're all coming from the same viewpoint, and it makes the functioning of a board sometimes quite difficult. You need to have different viewpoints because the overall sense is driving the strategy of the organization. So that's at a snapshot what we currently have. We've got the 3 regional chapters. We've got the committees in there. There's 2 of them that are added in, which are on the carbon calculator and the mapping and mitigation. Carbon calculators are they're both very important ones, but one of the things that we're trying to do under Stephen Robinson is obviously driving how do we measure what it is when we're asking institutions to step up. So Stephen's been leading on this in a phenomenal way for quite some time. The role of the board has really the 6 kind of key dimensions to what people do within a board. Strategy, that's the main function of any board, whether it's a not-for-profit or a for-profit board. and remembering that we are, even though we're volunteers, we do have responsibilities under the Government Act within Australia. So as directors, we have fiduciary responsibilities in what it is that we say, what we do, and how we operate as a board. There are legal implications to all of this. So first of all, on the strategy side, obviously driving, monitoring, controlling to an extent how we move forward as an organization, how we make the resources that come in available to the different parts so we can actually achieve the strategy and oversee the use. Performance, that's about monitoring how we're going. One of the things that you can't do as a not-for-profit, you can't run insolvent. So we need to make sure that we keep funds coming in to do what it is that we're doing. Obviously compliance, we have legal requirements that that we need to report back to on an annual basis, whether it's on our funding, the accounts, financial responsibility, but also that we are in adherence with the different regulations. Risk, obviously any board would have to have a risk framework that supports and informs the decisions that we make so that we're not exposing CANIE as an organization to things unduly. And then we have accountability, obviously. We have accountability to ourselves as a board, to our members, so those of you, we have a responsibility to you to do what it is that we say that we're going to do as an organization, and in the future, any employees that we have, which I hope will be very soon. The management committee, as I mentioned, is formed by either the chair or the president, the vice president, secretary, and the treasurer. These are just, I'm sorry, it's a really busy slide. I hate busy slides, but I couldn't think of a better way to just tell you this, that people would remember. So basically, if you're interested in becoming the chair, I can see it must be small. Monica's leaning forward on my screen to read it, so I do apologize. The chair is responsible for running the board meetings, managing or working with the rest of the board to manage the recruitment for new board members coming on board, create a culture within the board, which I think is a very positive one anyway that we have, but obviously keeping a good board culture, devising a succession plan. As an inaugural board, some of us will be stepping down at some point over the next few months, so making sure that we bring on the right people who've got an interest and a passion to keep things moving, but also reviewing the board performance. Are we doing what we're supposed to be doing as a board? So that's at the moment Ailsa Lamont, who runs the board. Ailsa is one of the co-founders and does a phenomenal job. The vice president is CJ Tremblay, and basically the role of vice president is assisting with all of the above and filling in where required. I mean, CJ does a lot more than that. She fills in a lot of the other working groups and committees, but the role of vice president is to basically assist the president in running that side of things. The secretary, now this is an interesting role because we are incorporated within Australia. The secretary has to be based here. That's not an option that so we can have any of our other roles from anywhere else globally, it doesn't matter, but the secretary's role, because it's a legal reporting requirement, must be domiciled within Australia. The key role of the secretary is to maintain the register of members, comply with the statutory reporting obligations, keep minutes of meetings, keep them accurate, set the meeting dates and communication to the board. All the really great stuff that my fellow secretaries here know what that's all about. The treasurer, obviously doing what treasurers do, keep accurate financial accounts, make sure that we've got money coming in, make sure that we can pay people where we need to, and also maintain and run the bank accounts. We run a couple of different accounts for donations in different currencies and process the payments. Board members. So as I mentioned, we've got 5 ordinary board members. The role of a board member is really critical because they represent CANIE and they act as spokespeople on our behalf. The requirements are that they attend up to 75% of the board meetings At a board meeting, we need a certain amount of people there in order to make decisions, a quorum, attend the committee meetings and events. We want all our board members to be very active, particularly in the fundraising side. Everyone who's a board member has a role in fundraising. It's one of the key things that we do. Always act in the best interests of CANIE, which means that, you know, if there are times when it comes up, because we all work within the sector, so there's sometimes discussions which have a conflict of interest. If it's an area you're involved in, you need to basically act in the best interests of CANIE and excuse yourself from any discussion of those conflicts. That's quite critical in the running of a not-for-profit board. Obviously, we all have a duty to stay informed about what's going on within the organisation and to work in good faith with each other, which I think it's almost a given, but it's something that I think we do very well, actually at CANIE at the board level. Regional chapters, as I mentioned, there's currently the 3, and we have some vacancies coming up, but obviously the regional chapters, how these work is that these are elected to support the local international education on their climate action journey. There are different stages. Some have been running for longer than others, and we have some interest from different areas. And as I say, we want to really expand this geographically. So if you're dialing in from another part of the world that's not mentioned in there, please get in touch if you're interested in looking to set up a chapter, and we can tell you the way to go about it. Talk to some of the regional chapters about how they've done it. We have some guidelines in place. But the chapters are responsible, obviously, for their region, growing the membership base, supporting the global working groups, hosting education networking events. We'll hear a little bit more from some of the regional chapters just towards the end. But it's quite critical. It's a very critical way of how we expand and scale as an organisation, have the greatest impact. So current vacancies. Ilsa, as president, will be stepping down after our AGM, which will be early in 2023. I will also be stepping down after the AGM in early 2023. These are not because we don't like what we're doing. Work commitments, from my perspective, are really ramping up. So as a result, in my kind of day job, I'm struggling to kind of keep on top of things. And also we have an open vacancy at the moment for the treasurer position. So if any of these interest you from the global perspective, or you're interested in becoming an ordinary member, do get in touch. I'll tell you a little bit about how we go through the process shortly, but we will be recruiting for those roles quite soon. So towards mid-December, we'll be sending out information about this at the regional chapters. And I'll let them talk for themselves. We've got currently vacancies, even though Amy is sitting here as secretary today, and she will be stepping down. We have a recently vacated role for vice president. Europe is staying strong in all the roles. You've even got doubling up at the secretary level with which is fantastic. And Oceania, we have a vacancy for the secretary. Fiona is currently, or just moved from secretary to vice president, so we have an open role for the secretary there. So I'm sorry, that was a quick and dirty kind of summary of the governance side, but just to launch our second poll, are there any of the areas, or which areas of CANIE governance are you interested in? If you could fill it in. I'm hoping to see this flashing up on the screen. All right, well, thank you. That's fantastic. But it's great to see that we do have a number of people interested, particularly, I think, at the regional level, which is great. The global one, we'll come to all of you on that one later as we announce how we're, the positions and how we're actually going to elect them. So thank you very much. So the process is really, it's pretty much the same for both the global board and for the regional board. Is the global board contact either Ilsa or myself if you're interested and don't want to kind of put it out there yourself, just to get an idea about what's involved. The nominations need to be, for formal nominations, need to be in writing. And they need to be sent to, if any of the executive committee roles, president, vice president, secretary, or treasurer, should be in writing, endorsed by 2 other CANIE members. So one is a nominator and a seconder. But this will all be, we'll send this round to everyone, so I don't sort of go through, but we have a we want to have a transparent process for how we both nominate and elect different board members. As we go forward in the future, some of the positions may actually be nominated for and not elected, just because some of them are becoming harder to fill. So we might actually have people who are interested who can fill those positions. If it's the regional side, then the regional presidents need to be informed as well and talk. If you're interested in the regional side, we've got great regional representation here and also global board representation. Just reach out. You want to have a chat and say, look, I'm kind of interested. What's the time commitment? And I'll ask the others to talk about their time commitment later. But from my perspective as a global secretary, I probably about 5-6 hours a week on a sort of an average week, so a bit more. So it needs a bit more time commitment. Some of the others might be more, some might be less. So having the time commitment is quite critical, and also working across the different time zones. So get in touch with myself or Ilse about any of those governance aspects, or as I say, reach out to any of your colleagues in the regional teams. Now, I'd like to have enough of me and some more from the region. So we'll start with Amy to talk a little bit about what the Americas does, then Fiona for Oceania, and then Monica to talk a little bit more about what you've been doing in Europe and the kind of what the membership does. Amy, over to you.
Thanks, Fraser. I just want to acknowledge that it's now 2 o'clock Pacific. I guess we'll go over time for a few minutes, and this will be recorded so you all can watch it at a later time if you're not able to stick it out with us. So I joined as Secretary of the Americas about a year ago in December 2021. And in my role, I schedule our leadership meetings, organize the agenda. This is going to sound similar, I imagine, for the other secretary roles. Email chapter members with updates, that sort of thing. And in our leadership meetings, we plan our monthly chapter meetings, which we at least have really tried to put a lot of effort into making really fun. So we've had Kahoots and quizzes and things, so we get to know a little bit more about Earth Day or the history of a certain idea or concept. We host spotlight presentations where we interview community members on what they're doing for climate action. We do networking and breakout rooms. So we try to make it really fun and engaging. So you can join us on Wednesday for another info session in more detail on the Americas chapter. I just wanted to share that some of the things we're working on right now, we're in collaboration with the Climate Justice Working Group. I'll be hosting an All We Can Save circle in early spring, where we hold 10 weekly meetings to discuss the book, All We Can Save, as we read our way through it. So think of it like a one book club, except that there's meetings along the way as you work your way through the book rather than just meeting at the end. So if you're interested in joining, reach out to me on Slack and I'll cut you our little interest form that we'll be sharing out as well. We're also working on revisiting our monthly meeting timing to make sure that as many of our chapter members can join as possible. So we'll be revisiting that. I'd say the time commitment, is a few hours a week, kind of depends on the week. I would say in the lead up to our monthly chapter meetings, there's a little more to do with slides and confirming spotlight presentations and that sort of thing. What I love about it is making our chapter members feel welcome and included, making space for them to network and learn from each other. I think my favorite was a number of months ago, I facilitated a mini workshop on the climate action Venn diagram. So guiding our members through kind of that exercise by Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, where you reflect on your skills and interests and identify your own climate action niche. And then working with our lovely president and vice president. I have to step down just for personal and professional commitment balancing, but it's been really fun. They're really lovely people. In terms of skills, really just organization is the big one. Organization, and I think kind of that warm energy to like get people excited and bring them in. But the organization piece, because you're mostly keeping track of dates, meetings, communications, agendas, calendar invitations, that sort of thing. So not particularly advanced, nothing that requires a master's degree, but the type of thing that just you keep things organized, I would say, is the most important. So thanks, and I'll pass it off to Fiona.
Thanks, Amy. So I am in the Oceania chapter, and I work with Ainsley Moore from the University of Auckland. She's currently the Vice President for Oceania. I believe that Oceania is the youngest chapter at the moment. Hopefully we have a younger one in Asia popping up soon. But this year we've really been focusing on growing our network and growing our member base so that we can have people involved and engaged across our region. Some of the things that we've been doing this year is presenting at the local conferences. So with Fraser, Elsa, Ainsley and myself presented recently to the Australian Universities International Directors Forum, which is an amazing platform to really raise awareness across all of the Australian universities about the CANIE Accord and how they go through that process. We're also going to be running a workshop at API in Bangkok next year. So that is an opportunity to spread the news and what the CANIE's we're doing and working on even further. If you're going to that conference, I really encourage you to join the workshop. There'll also be presentations throughout the week. But as a volunteer or a member of CANIE, if you're going to that conference, then you would be able to join that workshop and actually participate and help others work through what the CANIE Accord is, how to sign up to it, and how they might be already achieving some of those goals. Another thing that is coming up for Oceania, because we are the youngest, is our official launch, which we haven't yet had. So we're hoping, we were hoping to get that in this year, but time is quickly running out. So it may well be a 2023 gift, but we will have a working group in our chapter for that. So if you join us, then that would be an amazing first working group to get involved in. It would really help get to know the members, get to know how we work in Oceania, and really be part of setting up the chapter in this region. Time commitment wise, I think as secretary, I'd say average 1 to 2 hours a week, but same as Amy said, on the weeks where you have the meetings, and there's probably a little bit more work there just because you're setting up the agendas, etc. I'll pass over to Monica.
Okay.
I'm going to be fast too. So we have a leadership group there's 6 or 7 of us that meet every week. And then we decide on what we're going to talk about on the monthly meetings. We have monthly meetings in the European chapter. We've had invited guest speakers. We've talked about eco-anxiety, carbon literacy. We've worked a lot on the Travel with CANIE initiative. We want to push the climate accord as a way to have organizations commit. This week on Friday, we're going to have a very dynamic meeting inspired by the other chapters. So thank you, Amy. And what I like best about this, well, you have to be very organized. Yes, it's true. And what I like best is the connections that you make and the conversations that you have with people that are talking about the same interests that you have, and these very important things, and how we can incorporate climate action into international higher education. So that's Europe.
Thanks all. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And I do know that we have run over time. And just very quickly, these are some of the things that I see as benefits to volunteering with CANIE. Others could perhaps add in more, but really it's about, acting on your passion. I mean, we're all here because we're passionate about sort of climate action. So this gives you an opportunity to act on it within our sector. You will make new friends. That's an absolute given. You might not meet them all initially face to face, but certainly when you do, it's fantastic. I've met some phenomenal people through CANIE. They're just some amazing people doing great things. You will gain work experience and learn new skills, but you'll also be able to apply the skills that you've got to do good, which is fantastic. You can feel warm and fuzzy about helping the international education community. That's important. You know, we can get very cynical about the, you know, the size of it. And we often talked about in dollar terms, particularly here in Australia. Those are a lot of Oceania about the sort of value of the sector and this and that. But you know what? We do a lot of good in international education. And I think by what we're doing here at CANIE, by shining a light on the role that the international education sector specifically can take on climate action, it's really important, you know, and we do have fun. I mean, I think that's a definite, you've got to have fun doing what you do. And I enjoy what I'm doing. I just wish I had more time to give to it. So look, I mean, today, a great example, this whole Climate Action Week has been set up and run by volunteers, which is phenomenal. You know, big shout out today to all of you who are here, as well as those of you who've spoken and told us a bit about your experiences. In the background, we've had Zach, Jake, and Jason all doing stuff, whether it's putting up the video, whether it's releasing the polls, whether it's backup. So, you know, this is all the type of work that volunteers do. We're doing presentations, when we're doing webinars, when we're reaching out to colleagues. So there's so many different things that don't always require you to, you know, do too much, but it gives you a chance to be involved and engaged. So look, thank you. I mean, we have run out of time. We were going to have I'm happy to keep the chat open for a bit. If people do want to talk and have a much more open discussion. But I also would like to encourage all of you to have a look at the other sessions that are on during Climate Action Week. Particularly if you're in the regional areas, make sure you join your regional chapter meetings, go along to them. All the times zones are there, taking place on Friday, different time zones and different meetings. So wherever you are, there's probably one that you can join at some time. I would hope, but obviously I think get along also to the sessions on all of the sessions if you can. Those of you interested in the CANIE Accord and how to sign up, what it means for your institutions, make sure that you sort of dial into that session. That'd be great. And also, you know, just to get an understanding more on what we're doing. And if you're really desperate to hear my voice again, I will be on in about 12 hours time once more. So look, thank you very much. What would be great is just for a quick, if everyone can open their cameras, and we'll do a very quick screen capture to get everyone on board.